In today's video, we have some NHL RFA signings to discuss, plus we have some updates on some other RFAs, including Tkachuk, Rantanen, and Perlini. Plus, I want to discuss the possibility of Jake Gardiner actually returning to the Maple Leafs. Could that actually work out? And plus, the last thing I want to discuss is there any possibility there could be some collusion in the NHL amongst the general managers to help keep the prices down for some of these big-ticket RFA players that are awaiting contracts? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today, so let's dive in here with a couple of quick hits here. First, the Colorado Avalanche have signed forward Valeri Nichushkin, who is an unrestricted free agent. He had a very struggling year last year in Dallas after returning to the NHL after a couple of years of absence, and things just really did not work out at all, so they were not interested in having him back. But the Avalanche have taken him on a one-year contract, just worth a little bit over $800,000 on a one-year deal, kind of a prove-it kind of contract here to see if he can get his game back on track and stick with the Avalanche. Of course, they've been looking for more secondary scoring, adding some depth at the forward position. So this could possibly work out and help them out quite a bit. Or if not, at least it's a low-risk, short-term contract that even if it doesn't work out, there's not a whole lot of risk involved. Now, the New York Islanders have signed a couple of their restricted free agents, including Josh Hosang and Michael Del Cole. Only one remaining now would be forward Anthony Beauvillier. Now, in the case of Josh Hosang, this very likely is going to be his last kick at the can here. He gets a one-year, two-way contract valued at $874,000 at the NHL level. Of course, it's hard to say if he's going to make this roster at a training camp. He will need waivers to go down to the minors as well. So, it is possible another team could give him an opportunity through the waiver wire. It's really hard to say, but this is probably his last real shot here with the Isles. And in the case of Michael Del Cole, he gets a one-year, one-way contract at $700,000. We have started to see more progress out of Del Cole as early as last year. Things have started to turn around a little bit. He's got more NHL games, so we'll see if he can keep things going and actually become a regular NHL player. Now, we do have some updates on some other RFAs I want to discuss here quickly as well. Scott Powers of The Athletic, who covers the Blackhawks, is reporting that the Blackhawks and forward Brendan Perlini appear to be making some progress on a new contract for the young forward, and that they very well could come to terms on a new contract agreement, possibly as early as sometime this week. Not really sure exactly what the terms of the contract are going to be. Apparently, the two sides have had some good talks recently and have progressed well in contracts, so stay tuned. We very well might have a signing here for the Blackhawks very soon. In other RFA news, of course, yesterday we talked about Mikko Rantanen of the Colorado Avalanche and some comments from GM Joe Sakic indicating that he really wanted to make sure that Rantanen was signed before training camp got underway, before the regular season started, that he didn't want his team to have that as a distraction hanging over the team, and he really wanted to make sure things got done, that they were trying to negotiate and work on a contract. Today we have comments from Rantanen's agent, Mike Liud, who said that there really hasn't been a whole lot of negotiation going on. They've had about 3 conversations dating back towards the end of the regular season, and since the draft there was only one recent conversation where GM Joe Sakic reached out to Rantanen directly, so it still looks as though they're quite a ways apart, although both sides are certainly motivated to get a deal done, but it's really not clear when we can expect that. Like many of these guys here that we're going to discuss, and we'll get into a little bit more on the RFA market later in the video as well, I think we're going to end up seeing a lot of these guys end up settling and getting deals signed as we approach training camp. But unfortunately, even though Joe Sakic appears to be anxious to get something done, I want to make sure that Rantanen doesn't miss any time this year. It does look as though that there really hasn't been a whole lot of talking going on, according to his agent. Now, I also want to discuss Matthew Tkachuk of the Calgary Flames. There's an article on Sportsnet where they interviewed his agent, Don Meehan, and he has some interesting comments here, and I want to show you what he had to say. Now, I will link to the article down below in the description, but here's a few snippets here from the article. It says, "We took an approach where we'd be really proactive and progressive with Calgary," Meehan told TVA Sports. "We started early, we set a position, and we really didn't have to wait. We formulated a position we thought would be fair, and we given that to Calgary probably in the early part of June. We're involved in negotiations right now, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not a waiting game. We've made a decision in terms of what we think is fair and relevant for the player, and we're working with Calgary now. We decided that we would initiate the process with Calgary, and we did it early, and I think we're happy we did," Meehan said. Of course, we saw the free agent offer sheet with Sebastian Aho, which was another confirmation of the market. The 21-year-old set new career highs with 34 goals and 77 points in 80 games for the Flames last year, then registered 2 goals and 3 points in 5 playoff games against the Avalanche. One thing Meehan does not anticipate is a standoff similar to the one the Leafs had with William Nylander, where he ended up signing before the 5 p.m. Eastern RFA deadline on December the 1st. The worst thing you want is a Nylander kind of scenario where the player is out until December. That's not beneficial for the player or the club. Obviously, these remarks from his agent are rather interesting to me. At the same time, you can say that he appears motivated to get a deal done because they don't want the player to miss out of any time of the NHL season, which, like he said, is not good for the player or the NHL team, of course. And at the same time, though, it shows that they've been trying to initiate the process quite early on here, and they kind of set what they felt was fair, and are kind of holding ground here, trying to get what they think is fair for Matthew Tkachuk in this process. They provided that to Calgary quite some time ago, and they still don't have any contract in place as of yet. So I really don't see Tkachuk and Meehan really alter their course here a bit. Obviously, they feel like they've got a position set, they feel it's fair, and they're kind of waiting on Calgary to give them what they're expecting. So let me know what you think down in the comments is a fair contract for Matthew Tkachuk and what you think they're likely looking for from the Flames. Now, I noticed there's been a lot of talk around different media outlets talking about the possibility of Jake Gardiner returning to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then maybe the whole handshake deal thing that we've been hearing lots about over the course of the last few weeks maybe actually could be with Kyle Dubas and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I guess we won't really know 100% until Gardiner signs and starts playing for a team come this fall. But we're getting to the point where we're only a matter of weeks away from training camps opening up here. Most camps are underway in about 3 weeks. So clearly we're kind of running out of time for players to get stuff done in order to not miss any time at training camp and make sure they're ready for the start of the regular season. And even though many people feel it'll be really, really difficult and almost impossible for the Leafs to sign Gardiner, you can't rule out the possibility that they could trade out another player to free up additional space. Now, right now, they have the contracts of David Clarkson and Nathan Horton, which you know are going on long-term injury reserve. Plus, they're likely starting the season without forward Zach Hyman and defenseman Travis Dermott, who both had off-season surgeries, and from what we're led to believe will not be ready to start their regular season and on time here. So those contracts will also go on long-term injury reserve. You factor that in with where their salary cap situation is right now, and they certainly have ample room to sign Mitch Marner. But getting a Gardiner contract in there would be almost impossible as it stands here today. Now, they very well could move up 1 or 2 players down to the minors. They could go with a shorter roster. That's a possibility. But of course, any of the players that they would likely want to do that have fairly small contracts, probably anywhere $700,000-800,000. So it's not really going to free up a ton of extra space. Obviously, Jake Gardiner very well could sign a 1-year deal. Maybe this back problem that he's been experiencing and dealing with since the end of last year maybe has turned out to be a bigger deal than many of us had thought or realized, and maybe he just wasn't really able to get the long-term contract from other teams throughout this offseason free agent process. Of course, Jake Gardiner very well likely did want to return to Toronto as his first priority, his first choice all along. But he likely would have taken, you would think at least, a long-term contract with a significant amount of money. Many of us felt he'd get $6-7 million per year. If he was able to get that on a 5, 6, 7-year contract from another NHL club, I wouldn't think that he'd be waiting around for the Maple Leafs to possibly sign him to a short-term contract. If he does sign him with the Leafs, more than likely I would think it'd be a 1-year deal, kind of an opportunity for him to come back, reprove himself again to show that his back is doing just fine. He can still play the same as he could before. If he has a solid year, 40-50 point season, which we know he is capable of if he's at 100%, then he could very well land himself a big-time free agent contract next year, whether that be with the Leafs or somewhere else. I think the next year would be probably, in a sense, easier for the Leafs to sign him longer term if they decided to do that, but it could prove to be difficult again because they're not going to have a lot of other guys under contract. The whole blue line, minus Morgan Riley, is unrestricted next year, and he's not going to be the only one looking for significant money, including the newly acquired Tyson Barrie. So the Leafs would have a lot of decisions to make next season, but they would also have more flexibility. So if he did a 1-year contract, the Leafs would be in a better situation next year to get any more appropriate contract for multiple years, depending on how the current season here ends up going. The big question here, though, is really how do the Maple Leafs make it work? And there's really only one simple explanation, in my opinion, is they'd have to trade somebody with a decent enough contract to make the space. That's really all it boils down to. And if you take a look at the blue line that the Leafs have right now on paper via cap friendly, and I'll give you a quick snapshot here right now, they've obviously made a ton of changes throughout this offseason. They have guys like Tyson Barrie. They acquired Cody Ceci as well as Ben Harper from the Senators. They've also acquired Schmaltz from the St. Louis Blues. This blue line looks quite a bit different than it did to start last season. Of course, you got to factor in Travis Dermott will be there at some point later into the year as well. So they certainly have the possibility of moving a blue liner to make room for Gardiner. And if you ask my opinion on who the most likely scenario would be, it would have to be the newly acquired Cody Ceci. Now, they signed him to a one-year contract of $4.5 million, making him an unrestricted free agent. Obviously, they just acquired him in that Zaitsev trade. They dumped the Zaitsev contract in return for Ceci. Many wondered why the Leafs would want Ceci, and maybe the plan all along was to use him here as trade bait in order to free up space to bring back Jake Gardiner. It would not be surprising at all if that was part of the plan. Cody Ceci would not likely be an attractive trade target on a longer-term contract, but on a short-term contract for $4.5 million, there probably are enough other teams around the NHL that would likely give him a chance, especially if the asking price isn't a whole lot. Maybe they could flip him for either a prospect or maybe a couple of draft picks or something less significant that doesn't really impact their immediate salary cap situation. That to me would make a lot of sense, and that's really the only way I think that Gardiner comes back, barring a more significant trade of somebody like a William Nylander. And based on Kyle Dubas and what many Leaf fans out there think, that they're not going to be trading Nylander. Like, obviously, they want to keep Nylander, Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Kapanen, Janssen. Those are going to be the guys that they're going to ride with here that try to bring home a Stanley Cup in the next few years. So that doesn't make sense for them to make that kind of a trade, especially for a one-year contract. It would make a lot of sense, though, to move out a one-year contract, to sign another one, and then see where things go, and maybe look at extending him longer term, should everything work out. So let me know what you think down below. Does that actually make sense, and do you think Gardiner's handshake deal could actually be with Dubas and the Maple Leafs? Now, lastly here, I want to talk about the possibility of there being any collusion existing in the NHL amongst the general managers to kind of keep some of these big-ticket RFA contracts down a little bit and suppress what they're actually being paid out. Now, of course, we have no proof to suggest this is going on. I just heard them talking about this on Overdrive with Gord Miller and Mike Johnson the other day. I found it interesting. So I decided to bring it up here in today's video just to see what you thought and to see if this possibility does exist. Now, the possibility of collusion existing has been something that's brought up a lot in Major League Baseball over the last couple of years. There's been a lot of accusations about their GMs and ownership trying to suppress a lot of player salaries. And, the possibility does exist that it could be happening in other sports. Obviously, what it boils down to here is that it's a business. Obviously, from a business perspective, ownership would want to retain as much profit as they can. That's how business works. So obviously, they want to stay within the salary cap, pay as little as they can, while fielding a very competitive team to hopefully be very successful, which is going to help generate a lot of revenue. And from the player side of things, obviously, you want to make as much money as you can. This is your job. This is your profession. And you really don't always know how long you're going to have the opportunity to earn that kind of money in play. So when you're going to be, an opportunity to get a big-time contract, you're going to want to get as much as you can because it may be your one and only time. It's really hard to say. You can't predict the future. You could get hurt tomorrow. Things could change like that. So obviously, this is a business at the end of the day, no matter how we look at it. But we're in a position here of uncharted territory of 30-plus restricted free agents unsigned deep into the offseason. We're not far away from the final week of August. We're only a matter of a couple of weeks away from training camps getting opened up here. And you can't help but wonder if a lot of these general managers might kind of be working together to say, listen, I won't sign a contract over this amount. You don't sign a contract over that amount. Could they possibly be working together, which is why they're holding their guns here? Nobody's blinking to keep these player salaries down a little bit. Obviously, especially with the salary cap not expected to rise a whole lot in the next couple of years. That's going to hurt things as well with the police player salaries exploding out of their entry-level contracts. But you can't help but wonder if something like that could be going on behind the scenes with GMs to kind of help keep these salaries in check here and not explode too rapidly, because many of these teams are going to end up in the same boat of cap hell and not being able to retain their young players that they've drafted and developed and are kind of progressing into being big stars out of their entry-level deals. So let me know what you think down in the comment section. Is there any possibility something like that could be going on, like it's been accused here in Major League Baseball? Give me your thoughts. We'll discuss the possibility down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.